Support for this project is provided by the Dairy Business Innovation Initiative through Fresno State University. Visit our website at dairypcc.net for more information and other resources in the dairy industry. Program funding for the PCC comes from the USDA. For more information on this and other programs, visit usda.gov for the PCC Dairy Business Innovation Initiative. Support for this podcast comes from the Department of Agricultural Education and Communication at Cal Poly. Visit aged.calpoly.edu to view our majors and support our programs. That's aged.calpoly.edu for the Department of Agricultural Education and Communication at Cal Poly.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joe Aguiar, and welcome to You, Me, and the PCC, a dairy products podcast brought to you by the Pacific Coast Coalition. Like I said, my name is Joe Aguiar, and I'm also joined by my co-host, Kaylen, who I'll let introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kaylen. I'm excited to be back for episode 3 of our dairy podcast and ready to learn a little bit more about the California dairy.
Cool. And we are also joined by our awesome student panelist, Morgan, who I'll also let introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Morgan. I'm a first-year agricultural communications student here at Cal Poly, but I've had the opportunity to be involved within the dairy industry my entire life. I grew up in Hillmar, California, which is a very small town in the middle of the Central Valley that quite literally cows outnumber people. If you're driving through, you might notice that. But I've had plethora of opportunities within the dairy industry. I showed throughout 4-H, FFA, and I'm now serving as the District 4 Dairy Princess.
Cool. And what is a dairy princess? Not a lot of people have heard of that. What does that encompass?
Very good question, because I get a lot of weird stares when I'm walking around with a crown and sash on. But essentially, I'm an ambassador under the California Milk Advisory Board, which they work to advocate for dairy farmers across the state of California, and I'm fortunate enough to be representative of District 4. There's about 8 districts throughout California, and District 4 encompasses 19 counties from the top of Sacramento down to the bottom of Merced.
Wow.
So it's
big.
The whole area that probably spans the middle of, not the middle, but probably top half or so of California. And I have the opportunity of attending classrooms, conferences, speaking with the public and the community about dairy and why they should be advocating and consuming it. And also, of course, looking for the Real California Milk seal, which is a little tiny, it's not tiny, but little yellow circle with Real California Milk written on it on dairy products throughout California, which basically means if you're buying it, you're guaranteed to be consuming products that are made strictly on California dairy farms, which is a pretty impressive and exciting thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. And last but certainly not least, we have our special guest, Mrs. Kirsten Areias. And Kirsten, we'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself to the podcast.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Morgan for being a dairy princess, because that's part of what the County Milk Advisory Board sponsors to get out the message about milk, dairy products, nutrition to our classrooms and to the public. She's our ambassador, and that's part of what we do, and it's a really good part of what we do. I am my husband and I have a dairy in Los Banos, California, or we did. We retired in 2022, but before that retirement, we were in the dairy business since 1978.
Wow.
Of which we, enjoyed it, very, very much, but we were at the retirement age. So it was time for us to move on. I was a member of the California Milk Advisory Board for about 11 years. But when you're no longer milking cows, you no longer can be on the board. But it was my pleasure to serve on that board and all the things that they do to promote California dairy and nutrition. And of course, part of that is the Dairy Princess program. But we also support the Dairy Council of California, which is funded by the dairy families as well. If you go to healthyeating.org, you can see all kinds of information about what is offered through that part of what we do. Healthy eating is important for kids. It's important for everybody, and we need to get those messages out to kids as soon as possible. So that's kind of what I've done.
Cool. Very, very cool. So you did mention that you're on the CMAB. So I think now we're going to show a little quick video on some more background on the CMAB and what they're all about.
All right. Sounds good.
These days, people are getting back to a simpler way of eating. Back to basics. We're returning to wholesome, natural food, the way our grandparents ate. It's not about chemically altered, overly processed food anymore. It's about real food. Dairy is at the heart of all of this. Milk and all the dairy products made from it, like butter, yogurt, ice cream, and cheese, provide protein and calcium to our families the natural way. Not only can you pronounce the ingredients, you can understand them and feel good about eating them. These days, our lives are busier than ever, and we often don't think about where our food comes from. Fact is, a lot of it originates in California, thanks to some of the most fertile farmland in the world and that warm California sunshine. It's no wonder we call it the Golden State. Some say the finest dairy products around start with milk, made right here in the land of milk and sunny. There are over 1,400 dairies in California, owned and operated by real people. Dairy families who love what they do and want you to love what you eat. For generations, California dairy farmers have dedicated their lives to caring for the cows who make the milk that goes into the dairy products we all love. These families have been making real food long before it became fashionable again. My name is Kirsten Areias, and I'm a real California dairy farmer. My family and I take great pride in what we do and in the foods that are made from our milk. We love knowing that families all over have the opportunity to eat the same real food that our family enjoys. Families that are probably a lot like yours. Return to real. Look for the seal.
All right, so kind of moving on through this. So both Morgan and Kirsten, you both said you guys have backgrounds in the dairy industry. How did you guys start? Was that something you were born into? Is that something you kind of moved into? How did that work? I mean, you can either or if you can answer that question.
Yeah, so I was born and raised a third-generation dairy farmer in Hillmar, California, as I had mentioned earlier. So my entire life has been surrounded by the dairy industry, and it wasn't something that I was particularly involved in until I was about, 15 when COVID happened, and I started helping out more on our family's dairy farm and truly understanding what it really takes to be a California dairy farmer. Before, as a younger girl, I used to play in the cotton seed or just hang out and help my dad feed calves, maybe, if I wanted to. But by that point, it started becoming more of a responsibility, and I became to understand what it really takes and what it really means to be a California dairy farmer and a California dairy farmer advocate, which really led me to want to pursue a degree not only in agriculture communications, but also specifically within the dairy industry and pursue a degree of advocating for those dairy farmers throughout the state, which also inadvertently led me to run to be the District 4 Dairy Princess.
Is there a reason you didn't choose something like dairy science? Do you want to focus on the advocacy part a little more?
Yeah, my main reason for selecting a career within ag communications was particularly because of advocacy. Anyone you talk to within the dairy industry, especially dairy farmers themselves, know how tough it is right here, right now, in this time period. So the more people out there educating, understanding, and learning about this industry, the better. So if I could be one of those people, that just makes it a little bit better for this industry that I get to call home.
That's awesome.
And I guess, Kirsten, I'll ask you the same question. How did you get involved in dairy? I know you said you had a dairy yourself. Was that something you were born into? Did you purchase that? How did that work?
Well, it turns out we did it the hard way. My grandfather had dairy cattle early on. Of course, there were a lot of little dairies in Los Banos in my area at that time. Few of those exist anymore. But he loved the dairy. My father did not. My father became a beekeeper and he ran some beef cattle, and that was where his heart was. And then I met my husband when I was at a fair showing, and we got married. We purchased some land. We rented from his parents at first, and then down the road, then we were able to, in 1981, we were able to build 1985 able to build our own dairy and started our dairy farm here. We milked about 350 cows, and then raised the young stock as well. We also farm. We have about 380 acres of ground that we were farming. That was corn, alfalfa, sorghum, Sudan. Everything that we farmed was to feed the cows. So that's what we did until 2022. And we rented out our ground, and we are renting out the dairy facility as well. We still live here, but I will be a lifelong advocate for dairy foods and dairy families till the day I take my last breath, because I so much believe in what it is that we do, what Morgan believes that we do. We do it so well here in California. We have a lot of rules and regulations, but they're just designed to just make our industry better, more sustainable. And so that's kind of my background, how we got here. So that's it.
Were you intimidated stepping into that industry without maybe having that one-on-one dairy experience?
You know, we got married and then we started having a family. I didn't think about intimidation. We just got through every day. We had 4 children in 5 years. So by 1985, I had 4 children and we started the dairy business. So, you know, every day you got up and you did what you had to do. And the day that I planned on every morning when I woke up was never the day that I had. Someone doesn't show up to work. You have to run to town to get medication for animals or supplies for the dairy. Someone's late for school or forgot their homework. You know, there's the family part, there's the dairy part, and they just intermingle. And that's every day of your life. Dairy farmers, it's a tough job. And I admire so much what they do, how hard they work, and in the end, what they produce for the world.
No, it's a really, really big deal. And I think especially being in ag, me and myself not having a dairy background, but kind of looking on the outside in and seeing how much work they put into it and seeing how vast and how, I mean, this is the number one commodity in California. It's one of the number one exports. It's a big, big deal. So kind of circling back, Kirsten, to what you said about supplies and maybe stuff not going right. So we're kind of talking about the Dairy Business Innovation Initiative. I don't know how familiar you guys are with that. It's grant money provided by the PCC. With both your experiences as dairy farmers and being in the dairy industry, have you seen programs like this or used resources like this to help either your dairies or seen dairies near you do this? Be for either one.
Yeah, I guess we'll start with me.
Yeah.
So if I'm familiar with what you're talking about, it would be programs to help us be more sustainable.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Or
Okay,
better
so
operations.
yes,
yeah.
we did use some of that funding to do some projects out here in the dairy. Probably the biggest one that we did was a manure separator. So how a manure separator works is, we recycle the water on the dairy a lot. We use it to clean equipment, clean cows, and then it goes through the flush lanes to clean the flush lanes, and then it's recycled, goes back again to clean the flush lanes again. Well, all that ends up with some manure in it. So we use the manure separator to separate the solids from the liquids. The liquid would go into the lagoon, and then the solids would be scraped, put into a pile, dried, and then used as dry manure for fertilization. So fertilizing the crops. So that's one of the programs that I know that we used. But we're a small dairy. The small dairies they don't have as much trouble tapping into the resources. They're just not selected as often. I think some of these big projects for environmental reasons, they really want to get more bang for their buck. So they do tend to lean towards your larger dairy farms or clusters of dairy farms that can generate environmental needs.
Do you know any personal stories with maybe people who have used grant money and seen it for the better of their business?
Yeah, no, for sure. I actually have a cousin who has a dairy out in Hickman, which is about maybe 40 minutes from where I live. And they are very familiar with grants that are used to help fund their farm. But one of the main ones being specifically is buying, well, I guess it's not a grant, but they buy the produce, the leftover produce from a local grocery store. And that's what they use to feed their cows. Now, if you go on any dairy farm, they not only feed byproducts, but a majority of what they feed is byproducts. Cows are upcyclers through and through and through. They can eat the almond hulls and they convert that into milk, and just that fact alone gets me fascinated with really what this industry is all about, because the way that cows can do that to almond It helps out the almond industry, helps out the produce industry. And overall, it's just this one big cycle of sustainability and reuse, reduce, recycle, which is what everybody always talks about. So that dairy specifically definitely taps into those opportunities with their local grocery stores. But carbon emissions is a huge thing that we see here in California. And that's something I wanted to touch on really quickly because so many dairy farms throughout the state are working on implementing methane digesters onto their properties, which is, I mean, crazy with what, resources that we have on dairy farms with all the methane in the air that's being converted into renewable energy. My family dairy located in Hillmar has taken a hold of this opportunity actually, and we are implementing a methane digester on our farm currently, which obviously takes a few years to get, going through the process. But as far as I know, it's been smooth sailing, and obviously the dairy industry is very fluid and there's a lot of new things that happen every single day, but this one step towards sustainability can not only further help our dairy, but can help the environment around us, which we rely on as much as the environment and the world relies on milk. So
when you mention the greenhouse gases and methane digesters, that's such a huge thing in California, especially for animal agriculture within our state. What do you think the importance is to advocate about those sustainable methods, specifically in the dairy industry?
100%. I think there's a lot of misconceptions that surround, I guess, the word climate change or carbon emissions or greenhouse emissions. And anytime you mention it to anyone, there's always kind of a hesitancy to even pursue the topic further because you're scared of what actually might come out of the conversation. But I think it's a very important thing, not only to recognize and touch on, but also to address on our farms. Now, this issue of climate change and carbon emissions is very real, and it's something that's happening throughout the state. But also coming from animal agriculture, it comes from animal agriculture, but also comes from various different facets of the world. There's cars and planes and all of those things that contribute to those emissions. But specifically within animal agriculture, the only thing dairy farmers or what we can do is work to make it better on our part. And that's what you see on any dairy farm throughout the state of California is everyone's always working to make it better. Now, it's probably not always the best because we can always work to be progressive and better. But there's so many different farmers who are implementing feed additives within their animal feed to help reduce or reduce emissions. There's the methane digesters. There are using byproducts within feed. There's so many different avenues that farmers are taking to reduce these emission levels and increase their sustainability just to make sure that animal agriculture isn't the issue. And I think that the dairy industry specifically has been very proactive in that way. So it's definitely been a journey. It always will be, but I know dairy farmers are ready to take it on.
That's exciting.
That is really cool. I guess, Kirsten, I want to get your input on this. How have you seen sustainability become more and more relevant, I guess, during your time on the CMAB? How has that kind of progressed during your time? Or even off the board, have you seen that?
It's not just CMAB. I mean, the entire time that we've been in the dairy industry, we've seen the change in where we need to focus. I'm sure you're aware that California set a goal to reduce 40% of its methane emissions by 2030. Compared to 2013 levels, and it's leading the country with innovative solutions. And of course, that includes funding for these projects and methane digesters. I sent something to Vicki today. I thought that was so cute. My favorite line is, California is number one at converting number two, which would be, poop. We create a lot of that. And if we can make it a useful resource and capture the methane, it just makes us a better industry, makes us more sustainable. California is the leader in all of this. And what starts in California, sometimes, most of the time, spreads throughout the rest of the country. So, these are good things that are happening here. And it makes us a pretty valuable industry.
Yeah, I think, especially, not only with the dairy industry, but other sectors of agriculture. I think California sets the example We kind of tend to take the whole, I don't mean to quote Cal Poly, but kind of lead, and we learn by doing, and other states kind of learn from us. So I think that's something we're really, really good about, especially with methane and emissions, and learning how to control that with methane digesters and other methods, I think is really, really cool. So now I think we're going to move
I
to...
just wish that, oh, go ahead.
No, continue. You're good.
I just wish that we convert to a more business-friendly environment in California. California is the number 50 business-friendly state. You know, you just can't keep not working with businesses and making it easier to be a business in California. That was part of the reason we retired. It is so difficult to run a small business in the state of California between the regulations and animal rights activists and people that don't understand what we do, making rules for the people that do. So I just think that we all get in a room together, like the sustainability conference, I think is a wonderful thing that gives us eye-opening on both sides, so we can work together as an industry and as businesses, you know, to move everything forward. It is really good.
No, I do like that point that Kirsten just made, especially about businesses and how it's not always the easiest thing in California and just some of the issues that come with. And kind of you're talking about the sustainability conference, having something similar to that, where there can be an open dialogue about making it not necessarily easier, but a lot less intense for businesses, especially small family-run businesses like dairies, to get off their feet.
Having that conversation, being able to talk about those misconceptions, educate, advocate, all that stuff goes hand in hand. We just have to have the foundation and the opportunity to let those experiences take off.
I definitely agree. So now I think we're going to move to Cal Poly's perspective on the dairy industry, and we're going to see what some students think about dairy. What do you guys think of when you think of a creamery?
I thought of like the Cal Poly ice cream creamery.
Ice cream, or maybe some coffee creamer.
Just out of like ice cream in general.
Do you know how they make the ice cream? Do you have any idea what they do or what the process looks like?
It involves dairy and cows.
Like milk and in some sort of power plant.
Like churning, right? You like churn it up and like just throw it in the freezer, call it a day.
Have you ever been out to a creamery before?
I actually have. My cousin worked at a dairy.
Been to the Tillamook Cheese Factory?
Oh.
If that counts.
Yeah, that does count. That definitely does count. Do you know what a creamery is?
I do, as a matter of fact.
I think so.
Have you ever been out to one?
I have.
No,
Have you ever bought something from a creamery?
not directly.
Have you ever interacted with a dairy?
Yes.
What have you done for it? What did you do?
Made a carousel that the cows go on.
Mm-hmm. Have you been out to the one here on campus?
I have not.
I've rode past it on my horse, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, man on the street interviews, not my finest work, I'll say that much.
They're always fun to watch, though. Don't worry.
Yeah, watching yourself back. I think it's more the listening to yourself. It's like, oh, I really sound like that. I don't like listening to myself. So, back to what we were talking about. So, kind of continuing the conversation about businesses and advocacy. Kirsten, how have you seen, or can you talk about business advocacy and working for these smaller businesses, not only from a dairy perspective, but maybe from just a general business perspective as well?
Advocacy. See, that's a hard one. It's hard to get into those doors in Sacramento, and people are elected every couple of years, and there's new people. The people that are advising them, I'm not sure, if they've got good agricultural backgrounds. But agriculture is so important. I think California is the number 8 economy in the world. We're the breadbasket of the world. We've got the water policy is so mixed up and not good. We waste a lot of water that goes out to the ocean. We need more water storage. I don't think we've built water storage here in decades. I think there's been plans to build water storage, but they just haven't come to fruition. So we wait, and we have bad water policy. It's great when we got all this water, even though we kind of suck a little bit with the cows. It's not easy, but we get all this water in these years, and then we're going to have some dry years too. We're not prepared for the dry years because we don't have good water policy in place for when we have the good water. So, that's a big one for agriculture. Water, it's huge. So if you want to affect, agricultural business in California, you've got to get the water policy straight with people that know what they're doing. That can be the problem.
With working on bridging the disconnect with legislature, you talked about how you don't know if the people advising them have an agriculture background. Have you ever had the opportunity to maybe invite some of the policymakers onto your family dairy?
Not myself, but the California Milk Advisory, some of our board members, of course, did. We would have tours, and we did reach out quite often. It's amazing how much people's opinion of a dairy farm changes once they've come to one, once that they have seen one in their own eyes, not on social media, on negative social media sites and those that make us look bad. If you actually get to a dairy farm, you meet the people, you talk about what they're doing, how we're recycling. Morgan touched on earlier about how a cow is such a great recycler of byproducts and how so many of those would end up in the landfill if they weren't going through the digestive tracts of our cows. So there's some great things happening. So yes, we do reach out. Do we reach out to enough of them often enough? I don't think so, but I don't know how to bridge that gap.
Well, yeah, I was just going to ask the follow-up question. That would be, how important do you think that is, and how do you think that changes their perspectives? But you already kind of touched on that a little bit, of how critical it is to.
I've seen it happen.
Yeah, once you see it firsthand and can ask those questions and can actually have that like tangible moment where you're not just reading it and you can have that one-on-one experience.
Yeah. Have you heard
of
any?
You must experience some of that on campus as well.
Yes.
The negativity towards dairy and dairy products and dairy farms. I don't know how you bridge it there. This podcast is wonderful. And even though you don't like doing those street interviews, they're great. Talk about these things.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of good stuff to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a good example, kind of circling back, is on those man on the street interviews, we've talked about like the perspectives of dairy milk versus oat and soy, and kind of getting people's perspectives on that. And it's eye-opening, especially coming from an agricultural background and mostly in support of dairy products, and kind of getting an outside perspective on non-dairy alternatives and just kind of what people think, what they've read online, what they see on TikTok, social media, and the like. So I think that's been, from my perspective at least, with someone with, I'd say, a decent foothold in the agricultural industry, it's really, really interesting to get all those different perspectives.
And I think that's one thing our university works really hard to keep, is we are the largest student-run dairy, and we want to keep it that way. We understand the importance of having that facility on campus and having students involved in it. We see how it impacts their education, what it means to the students within our agriculture college, and how we can work to bridge that disconnect, even with the students that are in other parts of the university. So I think it is at the forefront of Cal Poly's mind that having that dairy on campus and being able to point to it and knowing you can drive past it and go pick up ice cream is huge.
No, that is huge. Kirsten, I wanted to go back to you and ask, have you ever been able to, how do I want to say this? Have you ever seen somebody's opinion on the dairy industry, usually either good or bad, completely, I guess, flip after either touring a dairy or working with you or working with other members of the CMAB? Or have you just seen that in agriculture in general?
Happens all the time. When we can reach out to those people and show them what we do, or a dairy council or a dairy princess goes to the classroom and tells about, where their milk comes from and how good it is for them. Yeah, it's just having that exposure. The negative is out there and it's rampant, but it's not true. But anybody with a social media account can say anything that they want, and it goes out into the universe, and then it's just kind of hard to fight that unless they have a personal experience or they dig a little deeper. The dig a little deeper part, all that information is out there, all the good stuff is out there, but you got to dig a little deeper to find it.
Morgan, as a dairy princess being a student, how do you think advocating for the dairy industry, being so young, maybe changes the impact it has on what you're sharing?
Yeah, the dairy industry is definitely, as we've mentioned, the most essential, in my life and so many others, but definitely a very integral part of not only California, but our economy. And as a student and a dairy princess, I have the unique opportunity to advocate for this industry, but it definitely faces its challenges.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to attend several schools within San Luis Obispo County during my reign as dairy princess and speak with these students about where their milk comes from. And coming from the Central Valley to SLO County is a very different change of scenery.
Okay.
Instead of talking with students who have typically seen dairy, like when they're either driving by or have seen it at their local petting zoo or ag days that their FFA programs might put on. Instead, now I'm faced speaking with 30 students who have never even touched a dairy cow. And I'm having to explain what this industry not only means to me, but what it means to them. And those conversations are honestly always my favorite, because seeing their face light up when you tell them, this is actually where milk comes from, and it doesn't, brown cows do not make chocolate milk. Like, those misconceptions are so little to me. And I guess I didn't really ever understand how somebody could believe the other side until I had those conversations and have had to change my perspective and my understanding to fit my audience's needs. I always say, it's like one of my favorite things, that they don't know what you don't tell them. And these students, especially the younger generation, has no idea unless I go and let them know, talk to them about what this industry looks like. And I actually had, going back to Joe's comment on almond milk or milk alternatives, so many students in these classrooms have brought up to me, what's almond milk? Where does that come from? What cow does almond milk come from? And I have to sit there and think about it for a second and how I can correctly answer this question without contradicting myself, and really explain that almond milk is a completely different, separate product than actually whole dairy milk. And I think that misconception partly comes in the name, because it's not almond milk. It's a product made with almonds that tastes like milk, but it's not milk. And having those conversations is, I think, one step in the right direction. But the bigger question is, how do we continue to take those little steps until eventually we can stop walking as fast that we are? So, yeah.
I guess, like the dairy alternatives, do you have any other examples of just common misconceptions about dairy production coming from the Central Valley and now educating students here in SLO County?
Yeah, all the time. I actually, on campus, when you're walking around, fun fact, I can never get real milk that's not Fairlife at any of the on-campus dining places other than Campus Market, where I can get my hands on Rosa Brothers milk. Yeah, and it's kind of not a little sad in a way, because there are so many people that think Fairlife is like milk, and that's part of it. But for me personally, I love myself some like whole milk. I just need a glass sometimes, and I can never find it. And when you're talking to students on campus or in the dining hall or just whenever you see them, there are some girls in my dorm who don't come from ag. And when I told them I grew up on a dairy farm, I think they looked at me like I was crazy, because they're like, what does that even mean? Those conversations have always brought up the most concern of, well, are those animals even safe? Are they treated right? Why are they getting milked like that? Does that hurt them? What does that look like? And I think part of it is really just having to recollect and understand that not everyone has the same backgrounds and experiences that everybody else has, and not in any area of the agriculture industry. So taking those extra 5 minutes of my day to talk to somebody about, actually, a milking machine doesn't hurt the cows at all. It relieves them, and it makes them feel better about going along their day. Dairy farmers do everything in their power to make their cows comfortable, and that's a big part of California dairies and California dairy farms. And I think that in itself, the animal welfare aspect of dairy farms is a huge misconception that is common throughout not only our state, but specifically on college campuses, because we don't know, but we can't expect them to know if we don't tell them.
Yeah.
I guess, Kirsten, have you seen sort of similar misconceptions at, I guess, like you're talking about with legislators? I know you're kind of talking about them not being the most informed or not coming from an ag background, but do these misconceptions still kind of run within legislators?
Yes. The simple answer is yes. And so then it's our job to educate them well. Then they have this short tenure there in Sacramento, and then they move on. I don't know that the passion is going to come from Sacramento. I think that our dairy farmers, our advocates, our mobile dairy classroom, I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's a wonderful program through Dairy Council of California, where they take a trailer with a cow and a calf, and they educate the students about where their milk comes from with an actual live cow. They show how she's milked. They talk about the things that she eats and her jobs during the day, the fact that most cows, all cows, should have 12 hours of rest every day. That's probably news to you.
Yeah, I did not know that.
A cow's schedule of her day is 12 hours of rest. So when we're milking that cow out in that carousel barn, we want her in, we want her out, we want her eating and drinking again, and then we want her laying on her mattress that we have out there for her in her free stall, so that she can make more milk. She has to have rest 12 hours. The average cow needs and gets 12 hours of rest every day. So like I said, I don't know that I'd love to educate legislators, but I don't know that's the best use of our time. It's definitely a piece of the puzzle. But I like what Morgan does, what Dairy Council does, what Milk Advisory Board does. We're all out there advocating for education. When you get education about our industry, it's the golden key. Because when you know what we do, what we make, and how we do it, we're to be admired for what we do.
I think a lot of what's awesome about a lot of that, it starts young. If you can educate within the classroom, starting in elementary school, that shapes a lot of the misconceptions, their perceptions of the California dairy industry and where their milk comes from. And that's fun as a kid, being able to go and see how cows are milked and what they're fed. Like, that stuff's exciting when you're young.
Are you kidding me? As a kid, I would have loved that. Being able to go run around and see these cows and actually see it in action, and kind of, like Kaylen was saying, have it correctly shape your interpretation of the dairy industry and what is actually going on, instead of kind of figuring it out for your own and being prone to finding misinformation and not having a correct perspective on it. So now I think we're going to move to another man on the street interview and kind of get some more dairy inputs from Cal Poly students.
Cal Poly ice cream flavor.
Cookies and cream.
Yummy. I gotta go Mustang Mint.
Mud pie.
Mud pie.
Sea salt maple.
My favorite flavor is Mustang Mint.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's the second one we've gotten today.
I really like the mud pie here.
Probably mud pie.
I would say mud pie.
Ooh, that's still popular.
Ooh, I'd have to say maple sea salt, because it's something unique that's the Cal Poly Creamery you can't find in the grocery stores, and it was actually a food scientist's senior project. They developed and tested the entire flavor, and it's really good, so try it if you have it.
You have so many fun facts.
Yeah. My favorite is mud pie.
Still mud pie.
Yes.
What do people like mud pie so much?
It just combines all of the best flavors. It's got Oreos and chocolate and coffee, so you can't beat it.
Oh, this is easy. Maple sea salt. What's your favorite thing about working here?
I like the variety of tasks that I get to do.
I like the cool outfit I get to wear.
You look great, personally. I like it.
The environment, very cool.
Yeah.
Good family kind of oriented.
Learn more about a new industry.
The coworkers are so fun. I feel like the staff is so friendly here.
That's so good.
It's like a big family.
I like all the people that I work with. They're my favorites.
I would say just like the hands-on experience that I get. I am a food science major, so this is very applicable. It's so much fun to make ice cream, make cheese, and eat it after.
What's your favorite Cal Poly ice cream flavor? Yeah. Oh, don't like this. Dr. Mike's not going to be happy.
It's cool that we were able to get to see, like Kaylen was kind of talking about earlier, the Cal Poly student-run dairy, getting to see students actually making the ice cream, making the cheeses, being involved with all the equipment, being able to get some one-on-one time with also a little dairy baby cow. So that was also a lot of fun. So now I think we're going to move into talking about the future of the dairy industry and some more sustainability pathways. I know we kind of alluded to it earlier, but I guess, Kirsten, if you want to talk about where do you see sustainability going in dairy?
Sustainability, that's on a great path. And not just here in California. I was reading an article the other day about the Michigan Dairy Producers Association is collaborating with Canada's Dairy Distillery to build a factory that brings byproducts from milk production into ethanol. The dairy industry took a big hit when they took our corn grain that we fed to cows, and they put it into gas tanks, and it made the price of corn go up so high. And that's a major thing that we do feed the cows, grain corn. So anyway, I think there's some real possibilities there with innovation. Sustainability is already on a great path. The other thing that I think is exciting is the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act of 2023. I'm hoping that it can go a little further out of the House and into the Senate and get signed. But I think that a child's experience with milk needs to be positive, and it's hard to do that with skim milk. It's hard to do that with 1% milk. At least they're allowed flavored milk now that makes it an enjoyable experience for a child. But if you've ever had whole milk, You know the difference in the flavor, and it's just so much more enjoyable, and it's really healthy. So hopefully we can get whole milk back into schools to increase that experience that the children have with milk. And that's, all the sustainability things that we have will really kind of help move us forward with the environmental concerns that they have. That's what we hear Washington talking about all the time is emissions and how to reduce them. We're doing a great job in our industry. We really, really are. And from, that's just a byproduct of what we do. The milk and dairy products that we produce in the United States are second to none. And actually, our California milk is even better than a lot of other states' fluid milk because we have more milk in our milk. What that means is when you have your skim milk or your 1% or your 2%, where they take some of the fat out, they replace it with milk solids. So there's more milk in your milk in California. It's really usually has a really good flavor, and it's actually a little healthier for you.
We continue to reiterate that of how, how's the right way to say this? How proactive California continues to be in the dairy industry. We are leading the nation, leading the industry, and it's showing. And dairy farmers are proud of that, and advocates are proud of that. And it's so exciting to see what's going to happen in the next 5, 15, 25 years as the dairy industry continues to make those changes, as they continue to meet the demands of the legislature. So it's exciting to see that they're addressing the challenges with so much force and confidence and making that impact.
Mm-hmm. And it's also really cool to see organizations like the PCC utilize and I guess disperse methods of helping these dairy farmers reach these goals by providing funding, providing monetary ability to these dairy farmers that can help them with equipment, like we've talked about with methane digesters and other methods of sustainability, and just kind of like Kirsten was saying, staying on this path towards sustainability, which is already looking really, really good, but it can help to have organizations like the PCC and other groups that can help kind of put this agenda forward, which I think the dairy industry can set a really good example for other industries to follow. So I think that's all the time we have today. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Kirsten, for coming on. So today we kind of talked about our backgrounds in dairy, some roles in your guys' roles in dairy advocacy as the Dairy Princess and as a member of the CMAB. And we kind of talked about sustainability and what that path looks like going forward with the future of the California dairy industry. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time on You, Me, and the PCC, a dairy products podcast brought to you by the Pacific Coast Coalition. Thank you all for listening.
Program funding for the PCC comes from the USDA. The show was created by Moses Mike, the faculty production lead. Guests for this episode included Morgan Oliveira and Kirsten Areias. This vodcast is a production of the AGC 225 class called Digital Communications in Agriculture. The student team that produced the show included Rachel Majarian and Victoria Paolini, the directors, host Joe Aguiar and Kaylen Jaime, lead technicians Alexia Vasquez and Isabella Ribeiro, and the technical team, Jenna Fitzpatrick, Julia Fry, Caitlin Browder, Caitlin Cardoza, Yuri Ramirez, and Madeline Tellison. You, Me, and the PCC is a digital media collaboration between the Agricultural Education and Communications Department and the Pacific Coast Coalition's DVII through Fresno State University. These credits were read by Audrey Herrera. It's me!